Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Just Saying Football with Jack and Sean. I'm your host, Sean Gannon, alongside my partner, Jack McNicholas. We're here to bring you news, notes, weekly updates, and game analysis of your favorite teams from around the league. Now, the chance, go check out our website, justsayingfootball.com. Follow us on Instagram at JustSayingNoGWJS for article and video updates. And don't forget to get us in your ears on Spotify at Just Saying Football. We are in week 3, bud.
Yeah.
Game's moving along. Vikings are 2-0. We love that. Sorry about the Giants.
0-2.
It happens. Sometimes kickers, it's a kicker year.
It's kicker year for sure. Yeah. But you know what else it is, Chauncey? It is an injury year. And I know you want to tell us a little bit about that. I mean, if you are playing fantasy football out there this year, you definitely got hit by this injury earthquake this weekend.
I don't know what's going on right now in the water in the NFL, but a lot's happening. So, Tua's been placed on IR with a concussion. Christian McCaffrey's hit IR with a calf injury. A.J. Brown is going to be out a few weeks with a hamstring. Cooper Kupp is out indefinitely with an ankle injury. Puka is already on the IR with a knee injury. Deebo Samuel is out a few weeks with a calf injury. Justin Jefferson has a thigh injury but shouldn't miss time, but we'll still see what's going on. Isaiah Pacheco hit the IR with an ankle injury. DeForest Buckner has an ankle injury and could play this weekend, but is trending to not be. Jermaine Johnson tore his Achilles and is out for the year. Evan Ingram pulled his hamstring in pregame and is unsure how long he'll be out for. Graham Gano also pulled his hamstring and is out indefinitely. And Kenneth Walker is day-to-day with an oblique injury. And there are also way more injuries out there. These are just some of the big names that have a lot of fantasy implication and or just star power that can change the course of your game. Again, like DeForest Buckner, that is the guy inside the middle for the Colts. It's going to be a huge loss. I don't know what's going on in the NFL. Everybody's getting injured.
Something's going on. You were even saying with the Rams, there's got to be something with the water on the West Coast because the amount of West Coast players right now, now it's getting to the East Coast. There's nowhere you can really go where you're not seeing a team getting affected in the first 2 weeks. And, obviously this is how people kind of, make their way and make their names by getting these opportunities. We'll be talking about some new exciting guys that we don't even really have any spotlight for now, but I mean, the way this is going to affect the seasons, and some of these teams are going to need wins this weekend just to stay in the race already. So, yeah, let's get right into it, Chauncey. Tell us what we got first.
Hell yeah. Starting off our blowout category, we have the Thursday night football matchup when the New England Patriots make their way to New York to take on the Jets. Jets are favored in this one by -7 with an over-under here of 40.5. Jacoby Brissett went down in the game in week 2. We saw that it went into overtime. What are your thoughts on this one? This is the first home opener for the Jets. They're excited. Aaron Rodgers is going to be back, and he's hoping to play more than just a handful of downs.
Yeah, and we've seen that the last couple of weeks. He's definitely looking a little more stable. Definitely relying on those awesome running backs, Breece Hall, Braylon Allen. We saw him last week. Rodgers, the oldest player in the league, Braylon Allen, the youngest player in the league. Touchdown connection, that was cool. Like you said, the Patriots, though, they beat the Bengals the first week. They take Seattle where they were, heavy underdogs into overtime. They got some fight in them. But for me, the Jets at home, I think this is going to be an awesome game. You're in prime time. Jets-Pats is a great rivalry, but give me the Jets in this one. I think that once they get the game going, we're going to see a big game from Garrett Wilson, who, we saw them, rely on run, like I said, but I think they're going to rely on the pass coming on Thursday.
The Jacoby Brissett injury makes me a little bit worried. I think the Jets defense still isn't up to par where they should be and where they are capable of. So I expect them to start to get it going. This is a huge rivalry game. Obviously, the Jets fans do not love the Patriots fans for getting dominated by Tom Brady for so many years and watching him go win multiple Super Bowls. I do want to shout out Alex Van Pelt, the offensive coordinator for the Patriots, who is just absolutely dominating in the run game with Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson. This is a huge blow for the Jets. I just mentioned him a little bit ago, but Jermaine Johnson tearing his Achilles makes you wonder if they're going to bring in Hassan Reddick finally on that big contract. That being said, I'm locking in the New York Jets for this one, and I do want to shout out Braylon Edward, who is tied youngest ever to score an NFL touchdown, and only 20 years old. Really, really young. That's impressive.
Yeah, he's got some years to go. Those Wisconsin running backs, as we know, are just built different.
They are built different. Let's keep this moving along. So we have the New York Giants making their way to Cleveland to take on the Browns. Browns are favored in this one by -6.5. Over-under here of 41.5. Giants were able to finally score a touchdown, and it was to Malik Neighbors. How are you feeling in this one, buddy?
Yeah, I loved what I saw from Malik last week over 10 yards. I loved up until he had to make that game-winning catch, and he dropped. Obviously took accountability for it, but Can't have that happen. Giants first team ever to score 3 touchdowns, allow 0, and somehow lose the game. It's very classic Giants, if you ask me. But give me the Browns in this one. They've had a rough couple of weeks. Even though last week they got the win in Jacksonville, they're at home this week. They're favored. I feel Cleveland is going to take the game early and just run Jerome Ford down the Giants.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried. This Giants defense, the cornerstone, what everyone thought was going to be so good, you go get Brian Burns. This hasn't lived up to what they should be and what they could be. So let's see what happens. See if they can get it going against Deshaun Watson, who's kind of been playing subpar since he's left Houston. I'm locking in the Browns, absolutely. I think this is going to be a Myles Garrett day. I think it's going to be all over Daniel Jones. And, of course, Daniel Jones has been known for his turnover, so I'm a little bit worried about that. And when you lose by 7 field goals, there's something that you start to begin to worry about. But moving this right along, we have the Denver Broncos making their way to Tampa Bay to take on the Buccaneers. Bucs are favored this one minus 5.5, over under here of 43. Buccaneers coming off of a huge win against the Lions in Detroit. How are you feeling in this one? Bo Nix getting the start. He's not been playing too bad, but not been playing too great either.
Yeah, he's leading the team in rushing with 60 yards through 2 games. So I feel like we are looking at the same old Broncos we've been looking at the last few years. A lot of growing pains early in the season. The Bucs, on the other hand, we got here in the blowout category. I think that they could get off starting hot. Rachaad White is injured, but we saw Chris Godwin step up big time last week. The kid had 15 catches over the last 2 games and 115 yards last week. So, not only is Mike Evans such a threat there, but, Baker having 2 awesome options. I think that the Bucs are going to be able to get right around this Broncos defense, and I would take the under in this game. I think a 43 is a little too high for me for this game.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a little bit too close. And you said it best. This Broncos team has not changed whatsoever. It's always low-scoring games. It's close, but the offense just never seems to really get going despite having a handful of playmakers. I do think Bo Nix can have a solid career. I think there are moments where he shows some promise, but this is going to be a tough Tampa Bay defense. They're going on the road. It's just all not favorable to Bo Nix. And just want to say a little fun fact, forgot to mention at the very beginning of this show, but no rookie quarterback has thrown a touchdown yet. So let's see if the trend continues this week or if one of them can break that. Moving this right along, we got the Carolina Panthers making their way to Las Vegas to take on the Raiders. Raiders are favored in this one by minus 4.5, over under here of 41. Now, got to just say a few things right off the rip. Raiders, huge win in Baltimore. Shout out to you. Great job. The Carolina Panthers have opted to sit and bench Bryce Young in favor of Andy Dalton, which is shockingly not shocking, but you have to wonder where his confidence is at. And I just want to give a shout out to Adam Thielen, who came out Tuesday and said this is not a Bryce Young issue. This is an offensive team issue. We're all in this together. I think it's just a very veteran thing to say, and I think he's absolutely right. Bryce Young will get a lot of the blame, and rightfully so, with the fumbles and the mistakes that seem to be kind of consistent. This offense looks terrible. They're the worst team in the NFL. I'm locking the Raiders.
Yeah, you said it. The Raiders showed a lot of fight last week. They kind of gave me some confidence. You see KC banged up a little bit, and you think somebody else in that AFC West has got to emerge. The Raiders, they're at home. This is going to be an awesome game for them. Devontae Adams is back, getting 100 yards last week, and I think this is an easy blowout for me. Once they get started, I think the Raiders, they really find their groove in the second half. And Andy Dalton, I've hated on him in the past. He could be better than Bryce Young. He could, but like you said, Sean, it's an overall team issue for the Panthers, I think, and definitely, going to be a mess this week, media-wise, game-wise for them. So give me the Raiders, simply. Love it.
All right, let's keep this moving along. So the Miami Dolphins making their way to Seattle to take on the Seahawks. Seattle's favored this by minus 4.5, over under here of 41.5. Don't want to spend too much time on this, but obviously Tua has a third concussion in recent memory. We both here just hope that he has a long, healthy career in life. We're no experts. He'll do what's best for him. That's all that we can hope for. What are your thoughts going into this game? Skylar Thompson is going to be getting the start. They did sign Tyler Huntley to their roster. Shout out to the Pro Bowler, who people forget did make the Pro Bowl just a few years ago.
Yeah, like you said, definitely they're going to be feeling the loss of their teammate for this game with Tua. He's definitely a leader there. We just hope the best, like you said, for him. It's just so unfortunate. He's the last guy that you want to see that happen to. But you have the Seattle's at home, dangerous place for them to play. They've been playing some great football despite the fact that they went toe to toe, kind of close with the Pats, as we mentioned. This, I think, will be a Zach Charbonnet game. He did a great job last week, replacement of Kenneth Walker, and I just want to shed some light on him. This could be a big DK Metcalf game. It'll be definitely interesting to see. I'll take Seattle easy here, but just hoping Miami finds a way to get it together.
Yeah, let's see what this offense can do. They got playmakers, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, obviously, burping a little bit. Sorry there. Pardon me. Anyway, they got some playmakers there. Let's see if they can get the ball out to them, maybe make this a little bit of a game, give this team some hope and whatnot. But, when you lose a great playmaker, this offensive leader into it, obviously your starting quarterback, you begin to worry about the long term for the season and what you're able to do. I'm locking in Seattle. It's not a question. DK has been absolutely electric. Like you mentioned, Zach Charbonnet looks great. Geno Smith looking for that new contract, is trying to play well, and he's absolutely doing that. Moving this right along, we're on an NFC West battle, my friend. When the San Francisco 49ers make their way to LA to take on the Rams, the 49ers are favored in this one by -4.5, over-under here of 48.5. Now I got a fun fact again for everybody. Brock Purdy is undefeated in the regular season when it comes to NFC teams, except for one, who he's lost twice to now. You know who that team is? You all guessed it right. It's the Minnesota Vikings. So that's my fun fact. LA Rams are riddled with injuries. What are your thoughts, buddy?
Yeah, I'm just sitting here looking at the LA injury report, and you got it right. I mean, last week you hit a nail right on the head with, when the Vikings got San Francisco, and they obviously were not the same team we were expecting them to be this year. They still have so many talented players, but the injuries are stacking up. The Rams, even worse. We saw them absolutely get decimated by the Cardinals last week. This is in our blowouts because it's a 4.5 spread. San Francisco gets Jordan Mason running, and we see what we saw from Kittle last week. I think that, the San Francisco 49ers are going to take this on the road, and we've already seen those videos of LA at home when they play San Francisco, and they basically are playing an away game in their home stadium. So I think it's one of those this week. Debo's out, Cup's out, Pook is out. This is a very unfortunate game. We probably would have loved to talk about it fully healthy.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I just think the injuries right now to LA, it's going to harm you more than help you. It won't be their year. I think the 49ers will bounce back from their loss last week. That shocked everybody, including myself, but a happy surprise and shock. I'll always take something like that. But yeah, let's see how the season goes. I think the NFC West is looking like it could be Seattle 49ers as we go down, but Arizona we'll get to in a little bit. Got some.
But everybody's going to go through the Vikings.
Everybody's going to Minnesota now, baby. All right, let's move this right along into our meh categories. We have the Chicago Bears making their way to Indianapolis to take on the Colts. Colts are favored in this one -2.5. Over under here of 46.5. First drive was absolutely electric for the Bears, and then the rest of that was not so much. How are you feeling as they make their way to Indianapolis?
Yeah, they're gonna. When I look at the Bears, we saw kind of a sloppy game from them. In the first half, they looked good. Joe Mixon went out for the Texans in prime time. You think, oh wow, this is going to be the time Caleb kind of steps up. They weren't really able to get it done. And then you look at the Colts, who were playing Malik Willis last week, and Malik really didn't. He kind of needed to just do what he did to get it done against the Colts. And Josh Jacobs, just ran all over them. So if the Bears are going to want to win this game, they're going to have to get DeAndre Swift involved. But I haven't seen that from them. And JT, last week, I had the touchdown bet in our Discord, and he was the only one that didn't hit in the early window because he didn't play the entire fourth quarter because they were trying to throw to the running backs, and none of them were him. So you're going to need to see him get involved early here if you're going to want to see, the Indianapolis Colts do what we saw week 1. And they're 0-2 right now. They're going to have to get this win, so I'm going to get the Colts. I think Anthony Richardson shows us week 1 Anthony Richardson, not week 2 Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, I absolutely like that. For me, I'm looking at this game, and I'm the Colts I love, and I've loved them for a handful of years, as you know. But I'm a little bit worried about what they can do offensively just with Anthony Richardson. Yeah, I think that the Bears defense, they didn't play a great first half offensively maybe, or a great second half, truthfully. They got only in field goal range. But that defense through 4 quarters was shutting down what most consider one of the best teams in the AFC. Granted, maybe there were some points left on the board by the Texans offense, but they really did a great job, I think, of slowing that down from the very beginning, holding them within 20 points. So I think Bears will rely on their defense. They're going to force some turnovers from Anthony Richardson. I will happily take the under on this. At 46.5. I don't think there'll be too many big plays from either quarterbacks in this. The one thing I do want to see from Chicago, outside of a better run game, though, is better protection for Caleb Williams. But Caleb Williams just shouldn't move around the pocket as much as we're seeing. It's not like college. It's not like those USC days. Guys in the NFL are really fast. It just looked like he was getting beaten up back there, hit after hit. So let's see what they can do. But I think Bears defense, bear down this weekend. Moving this right along, with the Green Bay Packers making their way to Tennessee to take on the Titans. The Titans are favored in this one by -2 with an over-under here of 38. How are you feeling into this game? Malik Willis revenge game in week 3.
Yeah, Malik Willis revenge game was not in my top 5 revenge game videos this year because we didn't think he would be needed. But, Jordan Love being out, it definitely presented the question last week of, what are they going to look like without him for these couple of weeks? And it's just going to look like Josh Jacobs running down people's throats. 32 carries last week, 150 yards, most of anybody last week. So you got to respect that. For me, I'm loving what the Titans are doing with Tony Pollard. And I think that with Will Levis, how we have been talking about off camera, just the embarrassment he's been. I'm sure you didn't get into that, so I don't want to get too much into it. But when you get into that, I think that this could be a game where he needs to prove he was the guy who took Malik Willis's job. So I'm going to go with the Titans here as a surprise pick.
Yeah, you could see Brian Callahan on the sidelines, and then you could also see him in the press conference after and hear him personally say how pissed off he was because they're just dumb turnovers, and they are. Like I'm not saying I could go out there and play quarterback, but when you look at it from like an objective standpoint and what you know about football, the mistakes that Will Levis has made were costly turnovers that should have been avoided. And who's coming into town is the Green Bay Packers have a pretty solid defense. DeAndre Hopkins has gotten very involved in this offense. Tajay Spears is a little bit banged up right now, so going to be relying a lot on Tony Pollard. I'm a little bit worried about how Will Levis is playing. The Mayo Man doesn't look like the best in the world. I think the Packers, like the Bears, rely on that defense, rely on these guys going to get turnovers. I know that Malik Willis in this offense can move the ball just enough to get you within striking range. As long as you're able to score points off drives, not to mention this, but like the Commanders last week, you'll find a way to win.
Yeah, I like that.
All right, moving this right along. It's a Monday Night Football game in our category. We have the Jacksonville Jaguars making their way to Buffalo to take on the Bills. Bills are favored in this one by -3 with an over-under here of 47.5. I think Trevor Lawrence said it best after the game where he just said, we suck right now. So how are you feeling about this game?
Yeah, I saw a clip of Bill Simmons just going off about the Jags, and I loved it. He was saying that they had, they allowed the Browns team to score all these penalties and all these other things and make mistakes, and they still lost the game last week. And I think when it comes to Jacksonville, we always have these years with Jacksonville where, we have no idea what they're doing. But Buffalo, we do know what they're doing. They're scoring points. They're running it through Josh Allen. When, you match these quarterbacks up, they're pretty different in games. But I'll tell you one thing. This Bills 3.5, it's looking like one of the picks I will love this weekend. Just easy for me because I think James Cook, after that 3-touchdown performance, that they're going to be running the offense through a little bit of him too.
Yeah, I'm looking at this, and I don't think you can hit panic necessarily just yet on the Jaguars. Obviously, after this game, you might begin to get a little bit worried if they lose. I'm locking in the Bills for sure. The main reason why is they've completely shut me down when it comes to my worries about the defense. They've been playing absolutely electric. Josh Allen, last week, they didn't even need the offense outside of James Cook. Josh Allen didn't go for 150 yards. They didn't need him to with the way that they were playing. Their defense looked absolutely fantastic. I think right now the only bright spot for Jacksonville is Brian Thomas Jr., who with 2 receptions for 94 yards last week, but looks like he is a big-time playmaker for them. So hopefully this builds into something that this offense can do. But Buffalo, it's hard to always beat them in Buffalo, as you and I know. We were there for the Colts game years ago. So can't go against Josh Allen. All right, moving this along, another Monday Night Football, because it's a doubleheader on Monday night. Remember that, everybody. You have the Washington Commanders making their way to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. Bengals are favored in this one by -5.5, over under here of 47.5. Bengals are 0-2 to start the season. This is not what everybody was expecting. Everyone was like, week 1 loss, fluke. Week 2 comes along. Maybe it was the refs. Maybe it wasn't. But the fact of the matter is that you're 0-2. So how are you feeling into this game as they're facing what should be a beatable team in Washington?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it before, no rookie QBs throwing a touchdown, so I'm not really worried about Jaden Daniels through the air right now. We have Washington only scoring 7 field goals last week or 6 field goals. I mean, that's all they needed. I don't think they're going to be able to do that against the Bengals. The Bengals went toe-to-toe with KC last week. But this is going to be a really tough thing. We were talking about it off camera. Teams that start 0-3 do not have a good chance of making the playoffs. So I'm picking the Bengals, but tell us a little bit about the probability there and what they could be in for if they lose this game.
Yeah, so we did a quick Googly. Thank you, Google, for existing during our time.
True.
And the facts of the matter is that when teams that start 0-3 have a 2.3% chance of making the postseason, not making the Super Bowl, not making the NFC, the conference championship, or the divisional, or even the wild card, just the freaking postseason. So if you don't want to start at 0-3, especially if you're the Bengals, not just because of the statistics, because of how hard your division is right now. You got the Steelers at 2-0. You do have the Baltimore Ravens. We'll get into in a little bit at 0-2. You got the Browns at 1-1. Like, you don't want to drop 3 games, and then now all of a sudden you got your divisional games.
Yeah, and with T. Higgins out too, there's so many question marks right now for me. Like, if T. Higgins is in this game, I know that they're going to win this game by 5.5. I think this is kind of like a live bet with the spread. These 5.5s have been kind of dangerous so far, but I think the Bengals just have too much to lose, like we're saying. And if you need to disrupt a rookie QB, it's a little bit easier than doing it to a vet. And since he plays pretty scrappy.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to also lock in the Bengals. I don't know if I made that clear. But moving this along, the Los Angeles Chargers making their way to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. Pittsburgh favored in this one by -2.5 with an over-under here of 39. Now, the Chargers have had a great start. I don't think anybody expected them to necessarily go 2-0 right off the bat, maybe a 1-1 at best. But they're playing great. J.K. Dobbins is electric, 130 yards in back-to-back games, leading the league right now, I believe, in rushing yards. How are you feeling? This is like their first real challenge.
Yeah, and yeah, like you said, real challenge. I mean, when we're talking about a front seven with TJ Watt's got to be one of the toughest challenges out there. And, I am a big LA Chargers hater, as I've been the last 2 weeks. I'm not going to hate on them as much this week, but I'm not going to pick them to win. I'm still going to take the Steelers to win. I just want to say that. But I will say, when you look at Quentin Johnson last week, getting 2 catches, 2 touchdowns, you're seeing a completely different attitude out of Herbert. They're going to have to take this as a very serious challenge, like you said. I do not think Dobbins is going to have that kind of a game. I think they're going to try to have to involve Gus Edwards on some goal line stuff. He's familiar with the Steelers from his time with the Ravens, but give me a Pitt and give me the spread 2.5. I think that this is a game that comes down to the wire, and I think Pitt could win off like a game-winning field goal.
Yeah, I'm going to also lock in the Steelers for me. I do think that the vibes for the Chargers right now are very different. You're seeing Harbaugh slapping the shoulders, hitting the chest, amping him up. You're seeing Herbert broken out of his shell a little bit more. Notice a lot more commercials with him. I don't know if it's just because the NFL states it or because Harbaugh's in town, but I'm seeing more Herbert around the commercial sphere. But for me, and I think we kind of talked about it off season, and everybody talked about it off season, but they do lack the playmakers offensively. Not necessarily in the run game, as Gus Edwards has shown us in the first 2 weeks, but I think for sure in the passing game. Now you get the Steelers defense. The Steelers defense is loaded with talent, whether it's TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Patrick Queen now, who's there, Alex Highsmith, Mika Fitzpatrick, Joey Porter. Like, there's so much talent on this team that I do think this is where the playmakers for the Chargers are going to struggle, and then this is where mistakes begin to happen. Not necessarily anything egregious, but a turnover here or there is a huge difference maker, and we've seen from Fields just enough that you can feel confident in his ability to move it downfield. There were 2 plays to George Pickens that were taken back due to offensive holding. Hurt me in fantasy. Thank you very much, refs, for
hurt a little bit of everybody there.
I saw the replay. It was valid. You were right.
First mean thing we said about the refs all day.
Yeah. And we barely even touched on that KC game. But for me, I just think it's going to end up being Pittsburgh's game. Let's move this along because we now have a Sunday night football game. It's the Kansas City Chiefs making their way to Atlanta to take on the Falcons. Kansas City's favored by -3.5 and over under here of 47.5. We saw the Falcons get a huge win on Monday Night Football against the Eagles in Philadelphia. Obviously, all the stats with Kirk Cousins playing in prime time and all these different things. But it just seemed like when they needed him most, Saquon Barkley ate his butterfingers right before the play. So how are you feeling in this game?
Yeah, I mean Falcons. I put up the thing that the Eagles were going to win. What happened? What happened to Kirk Cousins in prime time? It's a real shame. But I will say the Falcons showed me a lot. Bijan Robinson showed me that he's a top 5 back, no matter how you slice it. But what we were talking about with the KC, you were touching on the topic with the KC game. I mean, some questionable calls last week.
Yep. Remember that? Remember all those different ones? I think it's since 2018, there's been 18 called back touchdowns for Kansas City and for Patrick
Or like
Mahomes.
interceptions that are called back or whatever. It's just
Absolute insanity. I do think the good news for the Falcons is Bijan looks absolutely electric. He is your guy. Drake London was getting more involved in this offense. Kirk Cousins looked a little bit more mobile. Not necessarily running the ball, but compared to week one, what we saw, had a great game-winning drive to end it. I'm still locking in KC. I still think they're the best team. We haven't even seen Travis Kelce get involved. Shout out Rashee Rice, who's playing like a wide receiver one for this team. And if Kelce gets involved, I think the sky's the limit. Sorry, Isaiah Pacheco. Kareem Hunt did get signed for fantasy owners out there, but you're probably looking at Carson Steele and Kareem Hunt. I don't know. Maybe you want
Samaje Perine in there.
It's weird out there, but let's see what's going on. I do like the signing of Kareem Hunt just in terms of you get some stability in that ground game for them.
I just think the one thing for me is that's why I'm going to go with the Falcons this week, because I think that this is the week they're going to have to establish how they're going to go forward the next 6 to 8 weeks without Pacheco. We've seen him just become over the last 2 seasons before this, just such a cornerstone in the offense. He gets about 20 touches a game, so like you're saying, I think Kelce does get more involved. 7 targets through the first 2 weeks. Not inspiring, but definitely, I think the Falcons at home in prime time. I'm scared to bet against them again, so I'm going to take a little fun underdog one here.
I like that. That's a good bet. Let's keep this moving along because we got the Philadelphia Eagles making their way to New Orleans to take on the Saints. Eagles are favored in this game by -3.5 with an over-under here of 46.5. Now, the Saints have not scored less than 42 points in a game this season. I don't know how they're not the favorites for
the Super Bowl, right?
How are you feeling in this game?
15 scores, 15 possessions. Like you said, they literally are the best offense. It's a weird thing to say on there that the Saints have the best offense in the NFL. And, I thought it was a fluke, but then they beat the Cowboys last week at home. The Eagles, though, this is an interesting game. The fact that they're 3.5 favorites, I think it would have been 2.5 would have been, fair. New Orleans at home, one of the better teams that plays in their home crowd. The Eagles have lost 9 out of 11, like I said. So I think I'm going to go, New Orleans here. Another underdog. Maybe I'll tie the Falcons and New Orleans together, a little NFC South fun, but what are you thinking?
I'm absolutely going to take the Saints. To me, it's a no-brainer, and more so just because of how well the Saints are playing in all phases of the game. Derek Carr looks so comfortable back there. Rashid Shaheed has just been their deep ball guy. Alvin Kamara is back to Alvin Kamara of a few years ago, scoring 4 touchdowns last week. It was question mark, right, going against the Panthers, right? You're it's Carolina. What can you do in week 2? Then they go into Jerry's world after a huge dominating win by the Cowboys have over the Browns, and they don't even let them put up 20 points. Dak Prescott just signed a huge contract. CeeDee Lamb just signed a huge contract. These Micah Parsons about to get paid. All of a sudden they weren't around. And for me, the Eagles Monday Night Football game is a little bit worrisome. I don't love seeing reports that people don't like Nick Sirianni. This is not what you want to see going into the very start of your season. They're 2-9 in their last 11 games, the Eagles. These are all things I don't like. I'm locking in the Saints. They're at home. They're not favorite. This is all the more reason why it's going to be absolutely electric down there.
Yeah, and one thing I saw this morning that, Cousins, when he made that game-winning drive the other day, 0 pressures on his 6 attempts there. So you think if it comes down to a close game, it's not like Derek Carr is really going to get sacked, and it just seems like, as much as we talk about this Eagles D-line, it's like more show me. Don't tell me.
Yeah, let's see what happened. All right. We're into our games of the week, and we got a great one because we got 2 undefeated teams. We have the Houston Texans making their way to Minnesota to take on the Vikings. Texans are favored in this one by -4 with an over-under here of 46.5. Obviously, the Texans are coming off a big win on Sunday night. The Vikings had a huge win over the 49ers. How are you feeling as we go into this game?
Yeah, Texans, we talked a little bit about how they disrupted Caleb Williams. Definitely going to want to do that to Sam Darnold, who's looking pretty poised over the last 2 weeks. Definitely looks like this is the best offense he's been in a long time. Aaron Jones, Ty Chandler, both of the Vikings doing well, so you're going to have to get those guys going against this Texans front. Against your guy Daniil Hunter, and I know you're getting all of that. But I will say, I think that the Texans do win this game. I'm kind of loving what they're doing. It's kind of like the Bills for me, where it's like even when they don't score, they're going to have Kyrie Fairbairn hit a 50-yard field goal. Their defense is clutch. I think that Stingley is now kind of becoming one of those, top 5 kind of shutdown corners. He's finally built his way into that top 3 pick. But man, 46.5. Give me the over. I want some lights in this game. This is a game that should be in prime time this week for sure.
Yeah, it's one of those games I think you didn't think was going to be a good one. Just given what was going on with the Vikings, with the offseason miss and not having Kirk and how he finished the season last year. I do just a few things. First thing you got to look at is obviously Stephon Diggs coming back to Minnesota to play, and you got Daniil Hunter coming back to play, which is going to be a lot of fun. Daniil Hunter very familiar with his offensive line, so that's going to be a great matchup to see. Also, Cam Akers, shout out to Cam Akers, who played there for a little bit last year with us. I'm not worried about the JJ injury. He came out after the game, was like, it's a quad contusion, it's a bruise in my thigh. Phil Harris plays through it all the time. So I'm not overly worried about it. Obviously, I'm going to lock in Minnesota just for this week. I think it's going to be a tough matchup for sure, but I love what we've been doing defensively. I think what we're doing offensively is great. Kevin O'Connell put together such a great offensive play. Such a good offensive just play calling, all of Sunday. I was the deep ball to JJ, which was a beautiful deep ball. Was just to take that just shows how much faith you have in this offense. People are talking about it all the time. They should, but the bigger pass to me was the one to Naylor right down the middle, only on his other side where he could get it and taking 6.5 minutes off. This is what I want to see from Minnesota. So I have a lot of trust in what Kevin O'Connell can do. I'm going to lock them in. I absolutely am very much so looking forward to this game. I think it's going to be a great one.
Love that. Yeah, and 46.5. What do you think? You think it's going to be a defensive game or offensive game?
Over. I think over. We left 319 yards to Brock Purdy. We still got some stuff to figure out, okay? I'm moving this right along. We got the Detroit Lions making their way to Arizona to take on the Cardinals. Lions are favoring this one by -4.5. Over under here of 51.5. Arizona was electric last week. Kyler Murray, perfect passer rating. All right, with 158. Perfect. All right. Marvin Harrison Jr. was a different guy. Everybody was like, oh, he's so slow in week 1. Oh, he's not running his routes. Oh, he's not getting targeted. 4 for 131 and 2. Shut down all the haters. How you feeling about this one? Who are you leaning towards? This should be a great game.
Yeah, now you're talking about him. You got me all hyped up on Maserati Marv, man. I will say the Cardinals are definitely a surprise this year. I feel like we didn't really give them enough credit for kind of building all these guys together. But wow, Kyler, playing not injured, where he's playing off the ACL injury last year, he was primed this year for an amazing season. The one thing is, I want to say that the Lions are going to win this game. I will say that, in my opinion. But that 4.5 spread, I think this is a close game. There's something about that line that I just feel in my gut is Arizona could cover that. So I just want to put that out there. But Detroit, my man Sam Laporta got 3 targets out of 55 pass attempts last week. I love guys with volume. That is not volume. So we're going to need everybody in the Lions to step up, especially Amon-Ra dealing with a little banged-up thing. I can see him and Jamison Williams having a big week this week. But, man, I don't want to disrespect the Cardinals after they absolutely dominated the Rams.
So I'm looking at this game, and one of those stats I was looking up right now is the Lions are 18 of 24 in one-score games. Ooh. Now, that's a great stat, right? But it can also be a terrifying stat. As a Vikings fan a few years ago, it was 13-3 or 13-4, and it was and won the NFL record for most one-score games in a season. The difference on that ends up being pretty big, and I think what we saw on Sunday with Tampa Bay, and you go through some of the games from last year as well in 2023, Their defense let up a lot of points, let up a lot of yards, and if it wasn't for like the one stop, the one interception, the one big play,
Yeah.
they'd lose these games. So I'm locking in Arizona as a surprise team because of just how well their big plays are kind of going.
No, I like that pick. Either way, this game is going to be interesting.
It's going to be an interesting one, and there's something about the one score thing that I'm not loving right now with Detroit because even with 5.5 sacks coming from Aiden Hutchinson, you're still not able to win the game. That's not necessarily a great thing. I mean, great for him.
But yeah, I mean, highest over-under of the weekend, so it's like, is Vegas expecting like no defense?
Over.
Over on 51.5?
Yeah, look at the.
Oh yeah, let's go.
Let's pull this up. Well, I got 2 seconds, really quick. Let's pull up the last 2 lines game. I feel like they both hit over. We got 46, okay, in the OT game, and 36. Never mind. Oh God, no. I was hoping
I'm telling you, this different team right here, though. I feel like the way that the Cardinals are playing, like they had a big high scoring, back and forth with Buffalo. I can definitely see that as like the game script here. But the Lions, they're gonna have to give me my pick on the road.
I love it. NFC North getting pretty tight. All right, let's move this into our last game of the week. We have the Baltimore Ravens making their way to Dallas to take on the Cowboys. Cowboys are favored in this one by -1 with an over -48.5. Now this has been. We talked about it a little bit ago with the Bengals. When you start 0-3, 2.3% chance of making the playoffs.
Yeah, so Baltimore is in practice this week with the biggest sense of urgency as we're talking with Bengals. But, I mean, God, you got to hope Dallas shows up a little more than they did last week because they got a little demoralized by the Saints. I mean, this is our game week for a reason. We got a huge QB matchup here: Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott. We're going to be looking for Derrick Henry to get a little more involved than he has the last couple of weeks. They do not want to fall to 0-3 and then be in games and say, "Oh, well, we can't pass to Derrick Henry." Well, you're paying him $8 million, so get him the ball up and early. I think Dallas. It's going to be interesting seeing Parsons against Henry, but. Yeah, give me Baltimore in this one. I think that the sense of urgency is just the key this week for so many teams that are 1-1 or 0-2.
Yeah, and I think these are 2 teams that are literally probably the most urgent. Granted, the NFC East is a little bit weaker. I think whoever wins the NFC East, there's a possibility, hot take right now, that they could have close to losing record. Right?
This could be an NFC least type of year.
Yeah, so these games really come down to being very important. I'm locking in Baltimore. I do think this can easily go to the Cowboys because they're at home, and we're talking about urgency from both of these teams. So they're coming into this game with a chip on their shoulder. Yeah. There's what I really want to see from Baltimore outside of rushing Derrick Henry more. I'm not saying you should do that every week, give him 30 carries. He's only had 31 carries for the season thus far. You can give him a little bit more and rely on him, especially when it comes to winning the game. The second thing that I think is really going to be important is outside of Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews, these wide receivers, and Zay Flowers from time to time, are not getting open consistently. And when you're not able to get open consistently, and we saw it towards the end of the game against the Raiders, we're throwing a Justice Hill for 5 yards on a 3rd and 20, or like a 3rd and 12, or a 3rd and 10, and that's not what should be happening. Lamar Jackson is a great quarterback. Not only can he run the ball, but he can pass the ball. But it does also come down to these wide receivers a little bit to get open. And it's a lot to ask also of 2 tight ends to carry. And these tight ends are great, by the way.
No, they're great tight ends, but like at the end of the day, like you're saying, the openness of this offense is not going to be there. Dallas, they got Brandon Cooks, they got Zeke, they got CD, so there is going to be a sense of urgency there on the Baltimore defense to get this job done. So yeah, consider the defense probably the X factor for both these teams. I think this is going to be a lower scoring game, 48.5. I would take the under on this one.
I would also take the under. I think that's a good one. That's all the time that we have. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Lots of stuff always coming out. It's a good week of football. Get us everywhere.
Yeah, get us everywhere. Instagram, Just Saying, No GWJS, Spotify, Discord, Just Saying Football. Make sure to stay up on all of our picks, all our posts. Thank you guys for watching, and enjoy the weekend.
Enjoy.